Good afternoon and welcome to Nutmeg Sports, 2 o'clock on a Monday, December 7th. Donald Eng with you, along with Mike Suppy, here to talk about the days, all the days in local sports. Mike, how are you?
Good. How are you, Don?
Not bad. We got a lot on the docket today. UConn football gotten their bowl assignment. Also, we have the playoff brackets. We have an interesting article by Scott Erickson, critical of the FCX football scheduling and that it may have cost some of their teams playoff spots or at least playoff seeding. And finally, the issue of splitting private schools off into their own brackets for the playoffs, as some states have now started to do, including our neighbor to the south, New Jersey. But first, UConn heading to the St. Petersburg Bowl, December 26th, where they will take on the Marshall Thundering Herd. And my compadre here, Michael Suppy, we may see a streak coming to an end. You have attended every single UConn bowl game in the school's history.
I have. As a UConn alum, I've been to every bowl game, which the last one was the Fiesta Bowl, which didn't go so well. But this one's going to be tough for me to get to. The day after Christmas, 11 a.m. kickoff in Tampa. I don't know. I already got the alumni email that they sent out this morning for the packages they released and all that. But as much as I love Conference USA football with Marshall, to see UConn test their mettle against a team like that, it's going to be a tough one to get to, I think.
Not going to open presents and then run out the door. Maybe you can you Skype in from St. Pete for the
maybe hop on the red eye late night to get down there for the game. But I mean,
well, St. Pete is not a bad place to be in December, though, considering you have followed UConn football to beautiful Toronto for a January bowl game. This has got to be nicer than that.
Toronto, not only that, Detroit, also Birmingham, Alabama, where it was below freezing for the first time they had that in a while when I was there for that one, and then Charlotte, which is slightly more temperate. But
I was going to say, have you ever had comfortable weather conditions for a UConn bowl game? It seems like you're always in sub-freezing temperatures.
Two of them were indoors, so that climate control is always good. But when we went to Detroit, it was brutal. That was I believe January too, in that game, and it was really, really cold for that one.
I imagine the Fiesta Bowl.
Ford Field is a nice one.
The Fiesta Bowl must have been nice weather.
Yeah, I mean they were going through a little bit of a cold snap too, but that dry mountain air, desert air is a lot different from when it's cold. Their cold is a lot different from our cold. It gets cold there at night, but it was that game was that's a dome too, I guess. So for that game, so
University of Phoenix Stadium.
That would be 3 games that were contested inside of a dome.
Yes, the St. Petersburg Bowl is the bowl formerly known as the Beef O'Brady's Bowl, and also formerly known as the Bitcoin Bowl for 1 year, back in 2014. So UConn 6-6. I actually thought that they rode their defense most of the way. I actually thought their offense had kind of come alive with Sheriffs opening up running lanes for Arkell Newsome. He had a couple of big games in a row. They lost Sheriffs against Houston, a game they actually won. But I thought they were progressing pretty well toward the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean their offense, they scored with single digits 3 times, which is never something you want to see in college, which is more of an offensive game. But they were starting to find their footing, with Newsome and Sheriffs running the ball in the backfield. Good receiver Noel Thomas. But I mean, Marshall is a team that's going to put up some points. I mean, they're going to have to be ready to score. I mean, you see what happens when they're trying to play a defensive game like they did against Temple. Temple was able to make some plays, and UConn wasn't, and that was the difference in a game like that. I mean, I feel like they're going to have to get their running shoes on with Thundering Herd out there.
All right, well, we'll see. Mike Suppy, possibly a on-the-scene correspondent for UConn football's return to the bowls. I guess that remains to be determined. We'll see about that.
TBD.
So, but more locally now, tonight, of course, the football semifinals in the CIAC. We have 8 games on tap. We can run down the brackets here, starting off in Class L with the game where you will be, Shelton versus Newtown. Shelton coming in 11-0. Newtown, the Nighthawks, with a record of 10-1. That game tonight at 6, as are all the games, at 6:30 tonight up in Shelton. Your thoughts, Shelton versus Newtown?
Should be a good game. I mean, they haven't faced each other, I believe, since 2008 when they played in the first game of the regular season. I mean, Shelton's, as they have been all year, they're dealing with some major injuries. They lost tailback Peter Hoff in that game against West Haven to a broken leg, I believe it was. And
3 broken legs this year for the Gales.
Yeah, I mean, they've had some really bad luck with injuries. Newtown, everybody knows that follows CTHSFB who the big guns for Newtown are, with Ben Mason out there who's starting to make his presence felt offensively as well as defensively. And I mean, it's gonna. You always pick these football games that go chalk usually. I think Shelton will have enough to get the job done, but whoever they face coming out of the other side of the bracket is going to be a tough task for either one of those teams, whether it be Shelton or Newtown, that wins that game.
Yes, the other side of the bracket, number 2, Darien versus number 3, Southington. The Class Double-L semis are straight chalk, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. Darien versus Southington, that tonight at 6:30 at Boyle Stadium. Darien High School, as we know, lacking lights. Darien 10-0.
Really?
The FCX, yes, you may have heard about that actually. I
didn't
suspect
know.
I think it was on it was on Face Space or some other interweb thing.
Our long national nightmare.
Southington coming in with a record of 11-0, Darien 10-0. These are two teams that are explosive on offense. My impression is that Darien plays a little bit better defense, but I don't know that they have faced an offense like Southington.
No, they haven't faced a Division I quarterback like Jay Rose either. I mean, Southington is a team. They're going to go out there, they're going to throw the ball around, they're going to move the ball. And, I mean, Darien's a team that can do that as well with Graham and some of their other guys out there on offense. But they have the Gatorade State Player of the Year in Evanchik. If he's going to, show that he's the best player, he's going to have to come up with some sacks to try to slow down Rose and company.
That's always the matchup I like to look at. Usually when you have the two best players on the field, usually they play the same position. They're both quarterbacks, they're both running backs or something. In this case, you have the speedy end rusher going up against the quarterback with the big arm that likes to throw the ball down the field. So that definitely a game to watch.
Yeah, top two teams in the state's polls right now, subject to change obviously, because somebody's going to have a loss after this one. But it's going to be that's probably the marquee game of the night. Although I have a personal one that I think will be a better game. But we'll get to that later, I guess.
We'll probably get to that in a minute. The winners of these two games will meet in the finals on December 12th, either at 10:30 or 2:30, and at either West Haven's Strongfield or Willowbrook Park up in up in Danbury.
Willowbrook Park is in New Britain.
Oh, New Britain. Sorry. Yeah. So the championships, all the finals actually, on December 12th, either at 10:30 or 2:30 at the doubleheaders at West Haven and at Willowbrook Park. To Class L we go, where this is the bracket that actually had the most upsets, at least on paper. Number 1, North Haven versus number 5, Weathersfield. God's own offense, as Metal Ned would say from the day. North Haven seemingly unstoppable on the ground. So what can we look for in this game?
I mean, they run their stuff as they always do. Their wing attack, their option, but they have a little bit of a throwing element this year. North Haven. I haven't seen them play personally, but our colleague Bill Bloxham saw them play and said that they put the ball in the air more than they usually do. And to add an element like that to an attack that's proven to give some teams some headaches in the state.
I think the Barry Switzer Oklahoma teams put the ball in the air more than North Haven used to.
Yeah, they're not known for throwing the ball very much in this era of spread offenses. But I mean, if you have a system and it works, if you can add a wrinkle like that, it makes you just all that more dangerous out there.
Weathersfield 10-1, coming off a quarterfinal win over Torrington. You give them a chance in this game?
I don't see any way that North Haven doesn't roll in this one personally. I mean, I know Weathersfield, they play a relatively tough schedule, but if you're not used to facing a team like North Haven, a big physical team like that, they can wear you down, and their home crowd is going to be out there in full support, and I think it's going to, a relatively decent bus ride for Weathersfield. I think you got to give the edge to the number 1 seed unbeaten Indians.
Well, one team that has experienced the running game and the physicality of North Haven would be Notre Dame of West Haven. The number 7 seed travels to New Canaan tonight in the other semi to take on the Rams. Notre Dame of West Haven with a record of 9-2, New Canaan 9-1. This is actually a 7 seed versus a 6 seed, although, I mean, to be honest, both of those teams were dramatically underseeded. Notre Dame lost to North Haven and to the aforementioned top-ranked Shelton Gales, the number 1 seed in Class Double-L, and New Canaan lost to Darien, arguably the number 1 team in the state. So two teams that were dramatically underseeded meeting in a semifinal that could easily have been a final. What can we look for there? Notre Dame versus New Canaan.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame's losses came when they had some injuries at the quarterback position, Christian Lapoli. I mean, Notre Dame is a team that is shown they fought the battles this year. They had probably the hardest schedule in the state, in my opinion. Facing West Haven, North Haven, Shelton, Xavier, HAN in the middle of the season there. Whereas New Canaan's a team that hasn't quite honestly been as tested as much as Notre Dame has. They played one tough game all year basically. And I mean, a team like, they're both teams that are used to being this far in the tournament. And I think it'll come down to the home field advantage is going to help New Canaan, I think, in this one. But again, never underestimate a Notre Dame and West Haven team. You do that at your own peril.
Right. The schedule, of course, also I referred to in the opening. We'll get to it in a little bit. Scott Erickson with an op piece, a little bit critical of the FCAC for their scheduling. In this case, as you mentioned, Notre Dame 9-2, but has been in essentially 11 battles, and New Canaan with a record of 9-1, having only played the one super tough game against Darien, a game they lost by a touchdown, and then the rest of the schedule was a bit softer, which of course is why, with 9 wins, they ended up being the number 6 seed. To Class M we go. Top-seeded Killingly versus number 5 Brookfield. You got to enjoy the drive up to Killingly the other day to see Killingly versus Stratford. What are your thoughts on this game, Killingly versus Brookfield?
It's going to be a heck of a long bus ride for Brookfield, that's for sure. I mean, you're going all the way up 395 to get to Killingly. That's a long time.
It's about 20 exits past the casinos, isn't it?
It's out there. Killingly, another big thing, they have a grass field. That could play a factor if weather is an element like it was on Tuesday. But again, I was impressed with what I saw with Killingly, led by Austin Caffrey, who is one of probably the most underrated players in the state. I mean, this kid, he was a wrecking ball on both sides of the ball. And I'm sure Brookfield they got the tape and the game plan, but carrying the ball as a fullback, taking the pitches, he's tough. They're another team like North Haven that keeps the ball on the ground a lot. They have 2 really good tailbacks, and Caffrey and another guy goes by the name of a sophomore, Spencer Lockwood. And they gave Stratford High, fits in running the ball in that weather. And again, another team in Brookfield who likes to run the ball. It's going to be another smash mouth game between Killingly and SWC team. Right,
yes. Brookfield, a Southwest Conference team, as was Stratford. Killingly defeated Stratford 35-10.
A lot closer than the final score.
In the quarterfinal round. That was on December 1st. Brookfield, another Southwest Conference team, took care of Abbott Tech Immaculate High School by a 35-6 score. So that is your first semifinal in Class M. To the bottom of the bracket, where 2 versus 3, New Fairfield versus Ledyard. Both teams come in with a record of 10-1. And once again, New Fairfield, the home team, the Southwest Conference champions, having defeated Newtown. What do we look for there?
I mean, I saw New Fairfield play earlier this year against Massac, and I was blown away with how good they were. I know that Zach Tripodi, their star running back, picked up an injury in that game against St. Joe's. I don't know what his status is going to be for this game, if it's been announced yet, but I mean, that kid is one of the best running backs I've seen this year.
Right. The latest word I saw, courtesy of Game Time CT, was that he's probable, but probably not 100%.
Yeah, I mean, they have other guys that can handle the load too, and James Lewis, who is also a very impressive player. Their quarterback can throw it a little bit. They're big, they're physical. Ledyard's a team that's used to being here too. I mean, they're not going to be intimidated. Again, with this one, I always like to think the bus rides are a factor. I mean, you're coming across the state like that. I like New Fairfield. I've been voting them in the top 10 probably longer than a lot of other people have been because I saw them play. I think they're one of the top 5 best teams I've seen play this year.
All right, the winners of those 2 semis, as we mentioned, will meet December 12th. That's Saturday, either 10:30 or 2:30. Either at West Haven's Strong Stadium or at Willowbrook Park in New Britain. And finally, last but not least, we go to Class S, where for the most part, the brackets have held up. First, the top of the bracket, number 1, as I joked with Sean Patrick Boley, the all Connecticut Chargers, based out of Ansonia, 11-0, taking on Trinity Catholic, the Crusaders, out of the FCAC, 9-1. That at Jarvis Stadium, 6:30 tonight. Chargers, Crusaders. I mean, it's your classic, small school power versus a small school out of a power conference that made it into the playoffs this year. Give us your take on that.
I think this will be the game of the night. Ansonia, they didn't win it last year, which is, that's not something that usually happens. Them getting knocked off it was in the state final last year, but they're on a mission this year, going up against a Trinity Catholic team that was, by all accounts, the 3rd best team in the FCAC, maybe even the 2nd, depending on who you talk to. And they were, a team that has proven that they can get this far this year. That they're going to be up with all they can handle against Ansonia, that's for sure. With their 2 tailbacks, and a team that plays tough defense like that, it's going to be a little different look than what they've seen this year in the FCIAC.
Right, not a typical Ansonia team, as has been commented on throughout most of the season. This Charger team, normally when you see Ansonia get off the bus, they got a bunch of kids that are about 6'3", 270 pounds. In this case, they have more of a Class S look to them. They kind of average size across the lines. I mean, they're tough as nails, but not as big and strong as past Ansonia teams.
Yeah, they're more of a finesse team this year. I haven't seen them as much as I used to in the past. But they're going to be well coached by Coach Tom Brockett. They're going to be ready to play the game, and these kids have played. If they're seniors, they've played in the state tournament every year that they've been at Ansonia. Whereas Trinity Catholic is a team that's not really maybe have this kind of battle-tested experience that Ansonia has.
Right. And then we go, finally, the bottom of the Class S bracket, 11-0 Bloomfield takes on 10-1 Seymour. That game up at Bloomfield. Seymour pulled the upset, 56-28 over number 3 seed Granby, now taking on the Warhawks. A good year for Seymour. They've had some down years. They're a traditional state power. Fell on some lean times, and they appear to be on the way back. Bloomfield versus Seymour, what should we look for there?
I mean, you got Ansonia and Seymour left carrying the water for the NVL, so to speak, where, I think both teams would be motivated to try to get this win to set up an all-valley showdown here. But Bloomfield is certainly no pushover, led by their quarterback, Phillips there.
I honestly think both of these games are toss-ups.
Yeah, I mean, Seymour has been shocking people all year, basically. I don't know too many people in the beginning of the season that would have picked them to get this far, but here they are, and they're going to have they're going to want to try to prove that they're back on the state level where they had been during Coach Sponheimer's tenure there, where they were basically getting in almost every year. Whereas now this has been a long time between drinks, as they say, but they're back here, and I think they're going to be ready for the test tonight. And
they'll also, in all likelihood, have the best athlete on the field.
Yeah,
it's Jalen Kelly, a dual threat quarterback, also plays linebacker. He also kicks off. I think he's the punter. He pretty much he drives the team bus.
He's a classic Valley kid. I mean, he's tough. He'll do anything you need on either side of the ball. Special teams. He's a ball player, and having a kid like that, you don't like to bet against him when it comes down to it. But again, Bloomfield's got some players on their side of the field too that are gonna not want to. It's gonna be like you said. I think it's a coin toss game for sure.
All right. You can follow Mike Suppy on Twitter at Mike_Suppy, HAN.
Yep.
And he'll be doing updates from Shelton High School tonight. And the time is flying by. We got to take a break. I just happened to look down, watching Joe wave frantically at me. We're going to take a step out, and we'll be back after this.
Here at the Darien Sports Shop, we are very excited about our newly redesigned men's department. Gentlemen, if you're shopping for work, weekend, or wedding, we've got the latest styles and trends inside our spacious new department just for you. We have vast selections from Peter Millar, Vineyard Vines, Johnny O, Duckhead, Barber, and so much more. And you can even walk out of the store in the new Wolverine 1,000-mile men's boot. Conveniently located with free and easy parking at 1127 Post Road, Darien, Connecticut. Or shop us online at dariensport.com.
It's time to come back to hometown banking, where people are taken into account, not just balances. Where community comes first. A place where there's more than one kind of interest. Where automation will never replace consideration. Where they not only know your name, they know your dog's name too. It's time to expect more. It's time to bank well. Bank smart. Bank local. Bank well.
This fall for our red panda. That's right. Rashawn the red panda will be visiting the Beardsley Zoo for a limited time. Resembling raccoons, red pandas primarily eat bamboo, but will occasionally eat fruits, berries, young leaves, and certain tree bark, like their better-known black and white cousins. As an adult, Rashawn is expected to weigh 10 to 12 pounds, and you can see him at the South American Rainforest exhibit, Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo of Bridgeport. A whole new experience. 875 Noble Avenue, Bridgeport. 203-394-6565.
I'm Kate Chaplinsky. Join us for Coffee Break, weekdays at 11 to get the latest Connecticut news, weather, high school sports, and more. News doesn't get any more local than on Coffee Break on the HAN Network.
Back here on Nutmeg Sports, Donald Eng along with Mike Suppy, and we're going to talk for a moment about scheduling. As we've been talking about the football playoffs, and there was an op-ed in the Danbury News-Times and really in all of the Hearst papers by Scott Erickson, and it was about the scheduling, that the FCIAC top-heavy league needs to get a little bit more creative with its scheduling. He starts off saying it could have been the year of the blowout. Darien and New Canaan put on 2 record-smashing tornadoes of teams on the field. It was not a surprise when their starters were resting by mid-quarter. But essentially, the competitive imbalance costs teams in a sense, because the teams that are in the mid-pack get murderous schedules, and the upper-tier teams tend to have schedules full of 2 and 3 win teams that cost them bonus points come playoff time. We saw that in Class L, where New Canaan went 9-1. And it was a 6 seed, had to go on the road to play Windsor. And then also in Class Double L, Ridgefield missed the playoffs entirely. Whereas with a few more games against better teams, or perhaps with a 10th game, the FCIAC playing a 9-game schedule, they could have been in a position to compete for a playoff spot. They actually got jumped by West Haven. They both won their Thanksgiving games, and West Haven then jumped Ridgefield into that 8th and final playoff spot. Now, you see a lot of these games. What's your thoughts on that?
You don't see too many close games out there. I mean, is that a product of scheduling, or is that a product of just there being a gulf between the top schools in the state and some of the programs that are still trying to build it up to where these teams are? But I agree, it's a big problem because there's just not a lot of close games if you look at it week to week. I mean, I believe in the quarterfinals of the state tournament, only 2 of the 16 games were within a touchdown.
Right, and then of course with the other one of the other things is with the way the scheduling works out. In this case, Greenwich played probably the toughest schedule in the FCIAC. They lost to both Darien and New Canaan, and they narrowly beat Trinity Catholic, the 3 of the FCIAC schools that made the playoffs. Ridgefield also with the losses to Darien and New Canaan. But then when you look at the FCIAC teams that did make the playoffs, St. Joseph's and Trinity, both of them avoided the 2 power schools this year, and then both of them ended up landing in the Class S and Class M state playoffs.
And you also had Staples, who avoided one of the 2 when losing to Darien. But again, you see a team like Ridgefield playing 9 games, getting hopped by West Haven at 7-3 with 1 more loss. But if you look at West Haven's wins, they beat a handful of double L schools. They beat a very good 7-win M team in Foreign. They beat Hill House, and then Fairfield Prep, who was 5-win double L team. Whereas Ridgefield's wins outside of Staples, they had 1 win against a team that had 5 wins in Norwalk, where that's where you make the PowerPoints up, and that's how a team like West Haven gets in with 3 losses playing a tough schedule, where a team like Ridgefield is they didn't play enough of the good teams in the league, I guess.
It's almost like it reminds me almost of like the past years with the BCS. Trying to rack up BCS points by scheduling out of conference, or where strength of schedule really matters as far as seeding goes for the playoffs. It's kind of it's a 2-edged sword, because you want to have a strong schedule to get the playoff points. On the other hand, you need to win games. So it's a tough spot for the schools to be in.
Yeah, and I mean it's that's why these guys have these meetings to try to sort this kind of stuff out. But again, I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. I mean, somebody's always going to be playing a tougher schedule unless you have a rotating schedule. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, well, there was a proposal from the West Hill coach, Coach Marcuccio at West Hill, who wants the league broken into 4 divisions based on your rolling record over the last, I think, a few years. It was broken down. If you go onto the Danbury News-Times website or any of the Hearst websites, Scott Erickson with the article on that. But Coach Marcuccio said that perhaps breaking out the schools into 4 districts or 4 divisions based on their success rate over the last few years would be a more fair way to do it than have everyone play division games. The SCC, the Southern Connecticut Conference, splits its league into Division 1 and 2 based on enrollment, which which in some cases would work, in some cases it wouldn't. I know a league like the NVL, you have the double L schools that from the city that aren't particularly good at football. The strength of the NVL tends to lie in their smaller schools that, to a lesser extent, in the FCX. So, there's really no perfect way to do it. Someone's always going to be unhappy. There's always the perennial calls for the district model, but that probably won't happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the SEC. Some of their bigger schools are scrambling to get to Division II with the addition of
Hamden, Amity.
next year. Amity,
the two biggest schools, actually, in the SEC have not really had a lot of success recently.
Yeah, and they mentioned they used to have 2 crossover games in the SEC, and they whittled that down to 1 because they were hurting their smaller schools. Your Hill Houses and your Foreigns that were fighting to get into the state tournament, having to face a couple of those double L big boys every year. And I mean, this year Foreign had a tough loss to West Haven that kept they had losses to North Haven, Hill House, West Haven, and that kept them out of the states with 3 losses. I mean, but that had they won that game, those power points would have boosted them up pretty high. But again, it's a daunting task for a Class M team to face Class M public school in a town with a couple high schools to face a double L team like that. But I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, I guess.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. One of the proposals that we hear tossed about every once in a while is splitting the private schools, what they call the schools of choice, taking them out of the general conferences, like what would be considered the CIAC, or perhaps creating a separate state championship for schools of choice, which are generally would be the private schools, the Catholic schools. Also, some of the magnet schools, I guess, would be like a career or something like that, would also be considered a school of choice. And from New Jersey today, pending the State Commissioner of Education's approval, and in the absence of a successful legal challenge, the scholastic sports landscape will change overwhelmingly. Members voted 212 to 128 to relegate non-public schools beginning in 2016 into a separate conference for football, with interleague play against public schools being at the discretion of each school. Members also voted to restructure the state wrestling tournament with the formation of 2 non-public high school districts. So New Jersey taking the step to that it's essentially unfair to have private schools competing against public schools. Obviously, a private school can draw from multiple towns. Public schools, essentially, you take who enrolls in the school.
Yep, and I mean, sounds like a lot of those teams are tired of losing to the Don Boscos of the world and the Bergen Catholics. But I mean, good for them if they felt like it needed to be something that had to be done. Good for the schools to get on the same page and take it to a vote and decide that go play in your own conference and do your own thing. And
that gets talked about a lot on some of the chat boards around the state for high school fans of any sport. I'm not sure it's an issue in football. I mean, I would say in hockey and in basketball, it really is more glaring. I mean, when you look at the hockey tournaments, you've got your Fairfield Prep and Notre Dame's basically for the last couple of decades dominating the hockey tournament in the CIAC playoffs. In basketball, yeah, you see a lot. You had the St. Joseph dynasty, which got close to 30 years. Trinity Catholic also traditionally with some strong teams, Sacred Heart out of the NVL. So I'm not sure how big of an advantage that is in football, though. I mean, right now we just went through the brackets. One private school is still playing in football out of the 16 teams that are left. So what do you think about that? Football versus, I mean, football is different. Football is always football, but what did you think about that?
I think it's more basketball. It's definitely makes more difference. You have a smaller roster. So the pool of players that you're whittling it down from is a lot smaller. You have 11 kids on a basketball team as compared to,
and 2 good ones can take you to the state championship.
Yeah, I mean, so that, and if you have kids that are picking to go to your school, they're obviously going to be probably some of the better players will be attracted to the a school of choice like that rather than a public school team who you get who comes out basically. You don't have people a lot of times actively moving to a different town to play at a public school. You see the kids going to a private school where they can pick to go.
Right, they go to they tend to go to their neighborhood high school or their town high school or one of the private schools. And as particularly in basketball where 1 or 2 kids can make the difference in your season. Football, you really need a good 15 solid athletes.
One guy's not going to win the game for you in football.
One guy won't win the game for you in football. Well, You lucked out tonight. You're going to have some nice weather to stand and watch a football game.
Yeah, no 2-hour drive either, so let's go right down the street from the office.
No 2-hour drive. You could almost hold your breath and get to a drive to Shelton High School from here.
I wouldn't push it that far. I don't want to pass out on the way there.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Nutmeg Sports. For Mike Suppy, Joe Furlano, I am Donald Eng. We will see you tomorrow. We will break down some of the results from tonight. All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone.